Ladies and gentlemen, dear students and faculty, staff of the Iowa City Community School District, on your behalf, on behalf of Public Access TV and of the Educational Department in Iowa City, I would like to welcome the eminent leader, our friend and the friend of all of you, Dr. Craig Hansel. Dr. Craig Hansel is the Chief Financial Officer, among other things. Let me say, instead of just mentioning your official title, I want to mention that you are a visionary leader. And your show on this particular program is extremely popular. We got a lot of hits on YouTube, so we're going to be making a lot of money. Dr. Hansel is honoring us today or tonight with his presence. We are on February, the year 2016, right?
You bet.
And Dr. Hansel, you just a few days ago, on the 26th of January, you presented the budget for the year 16-17 to the Board of Education in the Iowa City Community School District. And my understanding after this presentation that I followed and I admired the way you presented it, after this, in 2 weeks, you were going to meet again in order to discuss more details with the board, right? And then 6 or 7 weeks from now, there will be some official publishing or announcement to the community, right?
That's
That
right.
would be March 28th. And then on April 12th,
Yes.
our community will be saying what they think, public hearing, right?
So public hearing.
Okay. So this process, I know that the work is a teamwork, no doubt about that. But the way you presented it and the way you are going to present today, in maybe a little bit more simplified way so that the lay people like me can understand.
Sure.
We have a lot of questions, and these questions, I wish it's not going to overwhelm you with a lot of demands from our side.
Sure.
But explain to me the process.
Well, Nahani, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come on the program. It's always a privilege, and I always enjoy talking to you about some of the things that I believe in pretty passionately, and I've been involved in for over 30 years now in this arena of school finance. And as I was mentioning to you before our program started, you know, school finance to a lot of people is kind of a foreign language, and so we try to make it as understandable as possible because it does deal with your personal pocketbook in some ways, you know, with the tax rates that we establish with the board and as we go through this budget cycle. So what we're talking about today is pretty scripted by the state. You take April 15th, which is the date that we have to certify our budget when all the school districts in the state certify their budget to the Department of Management. And then you just kind of back up from there. And there's a certain publication date where you have to have a hearing. And then we want to allow enough time for our Board of Education and our community to have those input opportunities along the way as well. So what took place on the 26th of January was we actually went through an assumptions process with our board, and I outlined what I thought from my chair in the organization, what we need to be considering as we develop our fiscal 17 budget, okay? Now the state's not doing us a lot of favors right now because they're not setting what our actual budget growth is going to be, and we'll get into that later. So we have to make some assumptions as we move down this path to put together our 17 budget.
it's a glass bowl or something. You know, you look at it.
Yes.
What's going to be happening?
That's right.
And
That
so
crystal ball is a little cloudy right
crystal
now.
ball,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think in our production meeting we discussed some priorities. Where would you like to start today?
I'd like to start with enrollment because that's really one of the main factors that drive our school budget. So if we could put up the slides that we prepared in advance for the enrollment component of our conversation, I think that'd be a great place to start.
We have John Karoff and Michael Peterson will do that for us.
All right.
And we are looking forward to listening to you.
This first slide that we have up here is just a real simple slide that just shows a period of time and the student growth that the Iowa City Community School District has realized in each one of those years. And as you can see, the net increase in students has been very, very good. I mean, we're a growing school district, right? Over 70% of the school districts in the state of Iowa are losing enrollment, and yet Iowa City Community School District is growing at a very nice pace. For budget year 17, you can see that we added 343.17 students, and a lot of people ask me, well, Craig, how do you get a point something student? Well, it's how our students are counted under the state formula, and they're weighted for different types of students, whether they're taking different types of classes with us and so forth, and that all goes into that mix, okay? And we call it a certified enrollment. It's not necessarily students in seats, but it's a certified enrollment that actually drives our budget. And as you can see by this slide, we've enjoyed very good growth. Now, in the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the future. You can see that we've had just a remarkable solid growth and a trend line that just goes up. And we employ a professional demographer in our school district out of Ohio that puts together a report for us and reports back to the board on what they see will come in the next 10 years. And for the foreseeable future, we're going to be adding between 200 and 300 students a year, which is just remarkable growth when you think about where are we going to put those students, who are we going to get to educate those students, and all of those things that come with growth. We're going to be dealing with, but that's what our projections are for on into the future, and we're really pleased with that.
And I think you go through like 10 years cycle.
We do.
Most of the comparison, most of the graphs, because here like we started with the year 2012,
Right.
and you ended up with a projection of the certified enrollment at 2021.
Right, of that 14,726.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Yes.
Right. On the next slide, there's a little different concept here, and this is something that our community needs to know about as well, is that we have students that reside in the Iowa City School District, but they're actually educated in another public school setting, and that takes place through open enrollment. Iowa law allows parents the choice, actually, to where they want their children to be educated. So they can live in Iowa City School as a resident student and open enroll out to a district like Solon or Clear Creek Amana or Mid Prairie or West Branch or any school around us that they feel that they want to have as their primary education for their student. They can do that. And then students that live outside of Iowa City schools can also open enroll in and allow us to educate their student.
Does the money follow the student?
But the money follows the student.
Ah.
And what I'm illustrating in this particular graph is that kind of what I call, and it's a very difficult trend for us right now, and that you can see that gap between the students coming in and the students going out is getting larger and larger. And in fact, I'm projecting for this year that we're going to be paying out over $2 million net cost to the school district. We're sending that money out to pay for educating those students in other school districts. And when I stop and think about that, you know, I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have those kids back here in Iowa City schools where we provide such a world-class education, and we wouldn't have that $2 million expenditure following those kids, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we really need to really know
about. Is that
about.
one of your concerns?
It's a concern of mine,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And then finally, we have the special education slide up here on the whole enrollment group that we have in front of you, and you can see that that's actually declining. What this slide is telling you is that as a percent of our population, honey, we're actually educating fewer special education students. That's the state average, the last time I looked, was around 12%. And we're now down under a little bit under 9% of our total student population that are involved with special education services. And so we've had and are experiencing a downward trend for percent of students in special education. So as we go to this reflections slide on our enrollment, you know, some of the things that we've talked about, we're going to grow by 200 to 300 students a year. The tuition out for open enrollment is a huge expenditure for us, and I'd love to be able to put that money back into our educational program here in Iowa City schools instead of sending it to other districts, quite honestly. And then you know, the number of students that we're serving in our special education program is decreasing, but the needs of our special education students are actually increasing. The weighting of our students or the severity of the disabilities that we're meeting those needs on is actually increasing. So that's kind of a summary of where we're at with some of our enrollment facets of our budget and how that enrollment impacts or drives our budget.
Well, let us move now to the allowable growth. I know that Michael Peterson just backstage told me that the allowable growth terminology has changed. Is that?
It has. Actually, a couple of years ago, the governor decided he didn't like the term allowable growth, and so we changed it.
He didn't like a lot of things.
Right.
I can say that.
So he changed it to the supplemental state aid that schools get each year, where we're allowed our budget to grow by the amount of the supplemental state aid that the state provides us, or that supplemental rate. And so we now call it supplemental state aid. But on the slide that I have in front of you, I'm still using the old terminology. It's easier for me to understand, and some of the public as well, for allowable growth.
Right.
But the thing you want to take away from this slide is that for 15-16, which is the year we're in right now, we receive $6,446 per student. Okay? You can see that clear back at the top of the chart, we enjoyed a few years where we had some 4% growth from the state, but 5 out of the last 6 years, that state growth has been 2% or less. And in 2012, we actually had 0% growth from the state. And that's really difficult when you think about our expenditures for our school district. Increase about 3 to 4, between 3 and 4% every year, and we're only getting 2% or less. Like this year, we received 1.25% growth, and we're projecting for next year possibly as high as 2.45, which is what the governor has suggested in his January 11th charge to the legislators. Okay. In the next slide that we have, this is pretty interesting, and this is the effect of student growth. You can see that the state rate is on the green bars, right, but our budget growth actually reflects a higher amount, which is a reflection of our student growth. Now, if we were a school district that was declining in enrollment, those would be bars that would be less than the state rate. So this is a reflection of our good growth, and so we've enjoyed, even in 2012 when we had 0 for a state rate, we enjoyed a 2.9% budget growth that year because of our growth in students. And so that's how the formula works, and it's a little bit difficult to understand, but that's really how all that is put together. And on our reflections page, you can see that I put up a couple of things for us to talk about. Currently, our legislators, the House is at 2%, as I understand it, the governor's at 2.45, and the Senate's at 4%. So they're still working out the details of our 17 budget. So as I put this together for our school district, I have to use a guess. And I'm using the governor's amount this year for that guess.
Oh, yeah. He didn't do much with his candidates, but...
Yeah. So, anyway, and then the other things on that slide that we've already mentioned, 5 out of the last 6 years, you know, our growth rate hasn't been able to keep up with our expenditures. It really hasn't. And so those factors, when you combine them together, Iowa's not spending what other states are spending.
You told me that we are the 35th state as far as the student
expenditures per pupil.
expenditure.
We are. We're 35th in the nation for expenditures per pupil. And yet we churn out an educational product near the very top of the educational spectrum in student achievement. And kudos to Iowa educators, and in particular our school district educators. Our teachers do a phenomenal job with the limited resources they have, but being 35th out of a nation of 50 states, we're not even average, Ani. And it would take us, I think the last number I saw was over $1,800 per pupil just to get us up to average.
It looks like our achievements here and what the kids are gaining and all these merits and recognitions and scholarships, it looks like miraculous.
It does.
Against all these odds, you know.
It is, and I say again, our teachers do miracles every day with our kids, and they're awesome. And I just wish there would be a little bit more recognition from the state, from a resource side of things, so that our budget wouldn't be quite as tight.
The community recognizes your role and your vision, and as a matter of fact, most parents are very grateful to the district for what they accomplish. Despite everybody's aware of all these difficulties, you know, whether we speak about them or not. People are so aware of what's going on.
Yeah. And because we lack some of these resources, you know, we try to protect the classroom as much as possible, but it creeps in. You know, our teacher-student ratios and things like that, they can't help but be impacted by the lack of resources all across the board. You want to move into property tax?
Oh, yeah.
All right. One of your most exciting topics, right?
Tax evaluation, you know.
Well, we're very blessed in our school district to have a very robust tax base. We have great businesses here. They generate a lot of assessed valuation for us. And even though we're the 5th largest school, Hani, in the state of Iowa, we have the 2nd largest tax base in the state of Iowa. And so we're very fortunate. And we're continuing to grow at a rate of over 4%, which is just fantastic. And so that's a really positive thing for our school district. And then the property tax trends that we have up there, we've been able to lower our property tax rate for our patrons over $1 in the last several years. And now the last couple of years we bumped it up by 17 cents last year, and we're proposing 19 cents this year. And the reason for that, Hani, is because we're opening up Liberty High School. And when we open up new buildings, we need more resources in the form of cash reserves so that we can get good bond ratings and that we can plan ahead for those expenditures that we'll need to spend, that will go to the school budget review committee with, and all those things. And so we are levying a little bit more on the property tax side to
Right.
position us
Right.
for those events. On our next page, I wanted to,
Can I just
Sure.
interrupt you for 1 second here, because I have noticed that in the early 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you mentioned the year 80 to 81 or 81 to 82,
right,
we received 42% of the total tax bill.
we did,
But this year, 16,
right,
we got 36%. It's a drop of about 6%.
right.
Would you be generous enough to explain to our viewers why this decline?
Well, the main reason is we're one of 7 taxing bodies that make up your total tax bill when you receive that each year. And through that period of time, we've decreased the amount that we ask from our taxpayers from 42 cents out of every dollar to 36 cents out of every dollar. And I think that just adds to what I said to you earlier before going on the air, was that we provide a really good value for our taxpayer
Yeah, and I
here.
think was your statement in front of the board, that Iowa City School District provides a very good value for
Right.
the dollar invested.
We do. And I look at something like this and I see that.
So this slide, as a matter of fact, represents exactly this kind of a drop. I see.
Mhm. People are actually spending less for their schools, and they're still getting a tremendous educational value from their schools
Wow.
at the same time. Our next slide that we have up here, this also shows that we do an exceptional job of keeping our tax rate down. We're one of the lowest in our comparability group. And then the slide that we have here for the portion of our budget that is under the control of the board and the portion that is not under the control of the board. Many people don't understand that our Board of Education doesn't have full discretion over the levy. Most of it, in fact, is controlled by formula, where the levy floats to what it needs to in order to fulfill its obligation under the formula. And that's different than our counties and cities,
No.
because they're rate regulated or rate fixed rate. We're not. And so our board has only about 27% discretion as far as their portion of the levy.
That on the left side of the
Right.
viewer, 27 and 15% for the voter, right?
Right, exactly.
Control,
Mhm.
and the board.
About
control
27%.
27. The state controls 58%.
Right,
And this ratio, of course, differs from one year to another according to the formula that
it does, it
you
does,
just explained to us.
it does.
Well, can we then move to the general funds? And I have a couple of hot topics I want to get your feedback about them. In the general funds, I think. we
Okay,
can-
well, we'll do this one last slide
Yeah, okay.
for the taxpayers. And we are proposing in our budget for this year to increase our tax levy by 19.5 cents. And for a house that would be $125,000, that would be just under $11 per year. So it's not terrible on the pocketbook, but that just kind of gives you that relationship. So let's talk about those hot topics.
Well, I collected about 4 or 5 of them. I'll see how time is going to allow us. Now, the state 1 penny tax extension
Right.
is one of the topics that we hear about now. It's a hot one.
Well, you know, the 1 penny is funding all of our facility master plan right now.
Right.
And it actually sunsets in 2029. If we could extend that, as the governor proposed, and there's current legislation, out to 2049, we could have additional revenue that would fund our facility master plan, and we wouldn't have to go out to our voters and put that on the form of property tax. And I think that's tremendous for our community.
Then the second one is about third grade retention.
There's a couple pieces of legislation, assessment with smarter balance and the third grade retention piece. And those are all being imposed on the school district and will drive costs, especially for the assessment piece. And if we have to do a summer school piece, I'm calculating maybe upwards of $250,000 additional costs for the district.
I think John has put my hot topics here.
Okay.
And I think if we can cover quickly
Sure.
Liberty and the new Hoover Elementary School, that would be wonderful before we conclude our program.
You bet. Under our facility master plan, Liberty's going up right now. And if you haven't driven out Dubuque Street, go out there. And I would ask our viewers to do that too. Drive by. The building's coming out of the ground. It looks beautiful. And it's right on schedule, right on budget. And we plan to open in August of 17. And Hoover, we just received bids on building the new Hoover out on American Legion Road, and that's scheduled to be built and open on the same day as Liberty. So both those
17.
buildings in August of 17.
Dr. Hansel, I cannot thank you enough for a wonderful, simplified, very informative presentation tonight.
Thank you
And
for having me.
We are so grateful. Thank you, and come back again, because we need to see you before the end of the year to see what had been accomplished.
Sure.
Thank you. Our program, ladies and gentlemen, will be on Channel 18, Channel 21, the Education Channel, as well as YouTube and Public Access TV website and station. Thank you very much, Dr. Hansel.
You're welcome.